All right, here we go.
Okay, okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingstone, and I have another returning guest because it is State of Origin Game 2 time. Now, my guest today, he is a Melbourne Storm tragic, an award-winning radio star, and a heartbroken Queenslander, Harrison Priebe. Welcome back to the show, mate.
Heartbroken but hopeful. Good to be here, Dane. Good to be with you again.
Hey, we didn't talk about last time, but you are an award-winning radio star. Can you tell us about it?
I did. I took out a ARN award gong for one to watch, which I don't know what that means if they're watching me or no,
Right
but I
now.
think it's just I've come up with some fun ideas on how to sort of cover sport for our network and very exciting projects. And yeah, I'm dedicated to it. And to be sort of recognised by my fellow peers was, I was really chuffed about winning an award, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Well deserved, mate. I wouldn't have got through the UQ radio journalism program without you. So well deserved.
No worries. I'll hit you up for a tip later.
No. Hey, so let's get straight into it, mate, because obviously it is State of Origin time. Now, you and I actually watched game one together up at Suncorp. Obviously, we are both Queenslanders. That was a heartbreaking result. And there has been some massive changes. Let's just dive straight into it because the big
Mm.
news is, well, firstly, the big news was Daly Cherry-Evans getting dropped as the oldest State of Origin player. He was the halfback. He didn't get the job done in game one. Now, I don't think many of us really thought he was going to get dropped, right? Like it was a pretty big shock to Queenslanders. That was that what you were feeling? Like I thought if you really wanted to win the game, you make the decision. But I just didn't think Billy Slater would do it midway through a series.
I think three losses in a row, including a series loss last year. I think the writing was on the wall. Queensland never lose three games in a row. And when you're losing three games in a row, your attack is failing to click. I think they didn't score a try in game three last year. 6 points game one this year,
Mm.
18 points game two last year. So they haven't really, their attack hasn't got going. And I think Billy needed to make some changes with their attack. And I think when you look at the likes of Cleary and Moses, they fire on all cylinders. Whereas I think Daly Cherry-Evans plays a more structured style, and it didn't really accommodate Cameron Munster's hectic game. And he made a really tough call to dump a Queensland captain. It's a pretty brave call, but his replacement, I think, is outstanding and a good selection.
We are going to get into that because Cameron Munster, of course, announced as the new Queensland captain. Again, a little bit of a surprise too, because I think if there was a betting market, I think Tino Fasuamala-Aui, he would have been my personal pick, and I think Harry Grant wouldn't have been far behind, but quite a redemption story. I just want to stick with DCE for a moment. Obviously, 36 years old. He was the oldest Origin player ever. 26 games for the Maroons, had obviously led them to that early success of Billy Slater. He won his first two series in charge. Obviously, it did go down to the wire in game three last year. They didn't get the job done, but the pack was well beaten, and the Maroons pack has been well beaten in these last three games. We don't know what happened in game one last year with the Reece Walsh Swati send off. But it's harsh to make him the scapegoat for this game. Is that sort of the feeling
Oh,
you got? Because I got that as well, right?
it is. The pack absolutely dominated Queensland. Payne Haas just rolled through the Queensland defence.
Machine.
Tino was the only one I thought that stood up, and his fellow forwards didn't rise to the level that he was, and I think that's what cost them. They couldn't get any go forward, and as a result, they couldn't get their attack up and going.
Yeah, and look, I think it was rough. In saying that, I think in Tom Dearden, they have an absolute star. We've obviously seen what he could do last year. Munster missed all of last year's series, and those minutes that he did have in game one, he looked electric. He looks great. On to Cameron Munster. Obviously, you are a Melbourne Storm man, so you know Munster very well. Just the background from Munster too, pretty crazy. Obviously, superstar for Melbourne Storm. He came through. I think he was originally a fullback, right? And he moved into the halves. He's absolutely killed it. 4 years ago, he was involved in one of the biggest off-field scandals. That was 2021, the white powder scandal. He was fined $100,000, suspended by the NRL, placed on a 12-month alcohol ban. That was sort of like the rock bottom for him. Went to a rehab facility, Spoke about anxiety, problems with gambling. Now he's 30. You were just telling me a little bit more off camera, but devoted father of three. He doesn't really drink anymore, from what I understand. Now he's the 16th captain in Queensland's 45-year history. What do you make of it?
I think it's a really good selection. He has turned his life around, like a completely different character to the Cam Munster we saw when he first started. Has sort of shred that party boy image. As you mentioned, he has the family, kids now. He's really sort of grown up, so to speak. I think his leadership qualities, Craig Bellamy appointed him to the leadership group, and I think he's really taken that in his stride, and he's just sort of been able to evolve his game and, mature off the field, but still maintain that sort of chaotic playing style on the field. And I think that will really spur Queensland on to have him in that role and to sort of spark that, hopefully, attack with along with Tom Dearden.
And I thought, like, just from, I mean, you and I were sitting next to each other at Suncorp, but I thought DC obviously did have an off night, sort of with the kicking game. But I mean, obviously, he didn't really have the space and time to do it. Munster was really having a crack, as he always does. And he's always that type of guy who can have that magical moment. Obviously, it didn't happen in game one. But I think watching the last, 5, 6 years for the Maroons, he's been an absolute star. And when he is in your team, he is that guy you think he can get it done. He can win it. He can create that big moment like your Jonathan Thurstons, like your Cooper Cronks, your Darren Lockyers. He can come through and break and make that moment. We haven't been able to see it, obviously, most recently, but I think if we are to even have a chance, if Queensland would have a chance over in Perth, they haven't won yet in 2 attempts. You'd think Munster would be a big part of it. Just as the Queensland team as a whole, obviously, he is going to be partnering with Tom Dearden. He's really shown some good spirit, that Queensland spirit we love to see. How do you think this halves combination is going to work? Because I do have one real issue with it. And I'll get into it, but I'll just get your thoughts first on the new halves for Queensland.
Big fan of the halves combination combo. Both ball runners. They take the line on. Very sort of Cameron Munster has that sort of every touch that he has, you don't know what's going to happen. He's going to create something. And I think it'll really accommodate Tom Dearden. And the thing I like about Tom Dearden is not only is he a good attacking player and can really add that extra spark and attack in the halves, but he's also a really gritty defender, kind of like almost having like a second hooker starting. He can really nail those tackles. And I think that's where he can really sort of set the tone in that sort of halfback role. Not only can he attack, but he can also defend. We saw last year, I think game 3, he pulled off some epic tackles off. I think he was off the bench at that point, or no, starting. But yeah, he was really, his defensive game really stood out for me last year's series, and I think that'll really add some spark and make this Maroons team a lot stronger.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with that. His defensive, like, even though he's like a smaller guy and he does sort of look smaller on the field, he doesn't seem to give up. He doesn't really shrug off tackles. He likes the hard work and he manages to break tackles. He's nuggety. He finds his way through. Maybe he's like a modern day Alfie Langer in a way, I guess, like a little bit. Like he does sort of, he's able to break that. I've seen some real try-saving defensive tackles, just like DCE did a few years ago, where he didn't give up and chase that one down. It's sort of like he has been the successor to this Queensland halves and where they're going to go. My one concern, and this is a big concern in Origin, is that long kicking game, because Munster and Dearden aren't really renowned for that long kicking game. Where in Origin, if you're camped and you're 30 meters, you're 40 meters, you really need to be able to pinpoint the kick into your opposition's goal line, right? You need to get it really dead in those corners to pin them on the back foot and make as much as you can meter wise so that they can't get that extra step up, having that extra 10, 20 meters if you're kicking it to the 20, 30 with their return carries. That's my concern. DC is a long kicker. He's one of the best kickers in the game still, even if he is getting on in age, and we are going to miss that. And by bringing Dearden in, you've got a Munster and him who are very much running, orientated, ball running type players. Obviously still kick. They've got good short attacking kicks. I'd say good high attacking kicks. I'm just worried when you go up against Nathan Cleary and Mitchell Moses, who are two of the best long kickers in the game, well, two of the best kickers in the game, right? Top 3, those two guys are for sure. How are we going to combat that? Because we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to have a little bit of luck our way. We're already struggling to dominate them in the forwards. How are they going to combat this long kicking game? Like, do you think they can do that in the absence of DCE?
I think they're going to take advantage of their short kicking game. I think they're going to try and catch the middle forwards who are a lot larger and bigger pack. than Queensland. Queensland's more mobile, has arguably more speed. So I think they're going to take advantage of the short kicking game, maybe catch some players, napping or some fatigued players. And I think that could be, their sort of advantage in that area to combat that.
That's a good point. A bit of a
Yeah.
ballsy move, right? A bit of a gamble, try and do it that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Complete opposite to the Blues sort of style, which I kind of like. Different styles of game, and I think it should be an intriguing battle.
it is. And Queensland need a lot to go their way. Now, the team has sort of been locked in now. The 1 to 17 is up on the NRL.com website. So I'm just going to roll with it with you. Now, Kalen Pong was obviously retained at fullback, didn't have his best game, obviously scored a match winner in Golden Point for Newcastle on the weekend, but still has been really quiet this entire season by his standards. Xavier Coates and Hamiso has been named on the wing. So I don't know how locked in this team is, but I don't mind if Hamiso is generally moving to the wing,
Oh,
swapping with Valentine Holmes.
yeah, I think having the hammer on the wing is a real advantage. I think the kickers will try and utilise his height as well, some tall timber, which helps combat sort of the Blues opposition. I think that can be a real advantage. Hopefully, a couple of tries for the hammer next Wednesday. I think
I,
that can be an advantage.
I think crucially, yeah, that kick return meters, he really sort of, from watching that game and watching that edge of him and Holmes in game one, he was really wasted in the centres. He didn't really have much
Mm,
chance of the ball. Of course, he plays fullback for the Dolphins, and Holmes is not a winger. He's a centre, and he looked
yep.
out of place for most of the game. He got caught out badly. I mean, he did have to go up against a pretty lethal edge from New South Wales, but he got caught out badly multiple times. I think if that is the positional switch they've made, that is a big move, and I think that's the right one. The
It's
other
kind of
side.
like sorry, it's kind of like a Storm kind of tactic. They have really tall wingers. Obviously, Xavier Coates is one of them, and I think they're going to use that tall timber to combat the likes of Brian To'o and Zach Lomax, who aren't that tall, and I think that can be their advantage. Put up high kicks, close to the line, and use their height to their advantage.
No, 100%. And honestly, Robert Toyer, obviously a lot made of him come
Yeah.
into the game. What did he play? Like 10 NRL games. He could hold his head
Oh,
high. One of the few Queenslanders in game one that I would say that
solid
could
debut. Yeah,
pretty
very, very, very good debut. I think he'll build a bit of belief off that, knowing that he can sort of handle that arena, and I think he'll be better for game two next Wednesday.
I found that to be their most dangerous edge too. Even though you
Mm.
probably on paper you would have thought it'd be the Hamiso Valentine combination. I thought it was Coates and Toyer who looked the more dangerous in game one. Halves, obviously, we just touched about Cameron Munster, new captain. He spoke about how emotional he was to be named. He did talk about, I did have that story up, being called. Like, I think even he would have been surprised to find out that he was captain. He said he was pretty emotional. If you asked him 5 or 10 years ago, everyone would have laughed in his face, which honestly is pretty true. Um, yeah, right. Like the party boy.
Yeah,
What was his nickname? Something Dog, whatever his name was.
Mad Dog Munster.
Mad Dog Munster. He'd like to party. I mean,
Hey,
he's a guy that I'd love to have a
he
beer
has his
with.
own ginger beer label too. I don't know if it's still going, but it's not bad.
Yeah, there you go. And he's obviously got his podcast with the Melbourne boys. Now he opened up to me. He said he broke down when he received the phone call around 9:30 on Monday night from Billy Sader saying that he would be the new captain. He said there was a bit of a tear, which it's not really the stories that you would have heard from Munster in the past. But obviously, being a family man, like we talked about, he obviously has matured. And I think I'm actually, the more I think about it, even though I thought someone asked me this morning, I thought Tino was going to get the nod. I wouldn't have been upset if
Mm.
Harry Grant got it. But the more I think about it, the more I do love this appointment because he is the mad dog. He's the one who can break it open. And I think he's got the maturity and experience behind him to lead this team. So I'm actually getting excited more about it, Harrison, the more that I think about this.
Me
Um,
too.
so I'm happy. Into the forwards, they're going with Mo Fodawaker and Tino Fasuamala-Aui again.
Yeah.
I think Mo, he didn't have the most run meters, but just from watching the game from the naked eye, being in the state, I don't think he did too bad. Like I'm not too upset about that prop combination.
Yeah, I think it's to handle the New South Wales big pack, starting pack too. So I think they've utilised that size, and hopefully, the other players, the other forwards, can get to Tino's level because I think he sort of laid the platform, and his teammates didn't, get to the same level as he did. So I think this is a bit of a chance for redemption for the Maroons forward pack to sort of step up and get to that level and combat, Payne Haas.
The only problem too heading into this is Tino is battling a sternum problem. He picked it up in the
Oh,
Gold Coast loss to the Broncos. It wouldn't be Origin without an injury concern in camp, right?
nah. Tino will play 100%. He won't let a niggling injury set him back. He'll play with a broken arm probably.
No, I don't
He,
disagree. I actually think this
he,
is going to be the Origin where we find out there's a flu scare. I think we haven't had that yet, so I think this is the flu
it's
scare.
been a while.
Um,
As long as it's not COVID or anything, just a little sniffle wouldn't hurt anyone.
we're not going back to that 2020 Origin series again.
Although Munster did excel in that game.
That is true. Yeah, worst Queensland side ever. Mate,
Absolutely.
obviously at hooker, and you can read more into this because you do watch Clubland pretty closely with Melbourne, but Harry Grant, he obviously came into the first game. He'd only had one game under his belt, was that right? And it's, or
Yeah, he
maybe,
was out. He went out with, I believe, a hamstring injury for a few weeks. Set him back for quite a while. Struggled in Origin. Didn't have his best game, but I think that's a one-off. We all know what Harry can bring. His nickname isn't Harry Houdini for a reason. He can create magic, and I think a solid game last Friday really helped him regain that confidence, and probably a good sort of hit out before the team heads to Perth. And I think he needed that, and I don't think he'll play two bad games in a row.
there is a school of thought that he might not be a starting Origin hooker, that you bring him in after 20 minutes. I know him and Ben Hunt had that combination. You sort of take
Mm,
that edge off. That's first, how brutal the first 20 minutes in Origin series can be, an Origin game. They've, of course, with this team at the moment, they've gone with Kurt Mann as
mm.
the 14 off the bench. Obviously, another utility from the Bulldogs who's played very well in Clubland. I would be very shocked if they did make that switch, though, if Grant were to start off the bench, right?
Yeah, first game, I don't think they're going to gamble on starting a debutant in a state of origin. But I do like Kurt Mann's selection. As you mentioned, the utility, he can play in the halves, he can play centre, he can play in the back, anywhere in the backs. A very versatile hooker, a bit of hooker, backup hooker, very versatile player. And it's a long time calling. He's really sort of applied his trade for a fair few years now, and finally gets a call up.
No, well deserved. And Queensland do need a bit of spark from somewhere, so I'm not surprised. Now, the starting second row on this NRL team that I've got is Ruben Cotter and Kurt Capewell. Now, Nane is named on the interchange in this. I would expect him to start because he again was one of Queensland's best in that first game. His leap for the high balls really created headaches for New South Wales because he just kept contesting. That was probably one area where we did have some success. Putting those high balls up, Nane was able to come in and really just sort of, create some distraction in those New South Wales defenders' minds. And we got the ball, I think, at least once from him doing that. But Kurt Capewell obviously gets the recall. What do you make of that one? Because it's interesting because they've still got Cotter in the second row. Cotter's not a second rower. He's been playing prop and more likely lock. And dropping Beau Fermor, which we haven't touched on yet, when I didn't think he looked that out of place.
I think Kurt Capel obviously brings that experience. So maybe Billy was looking for a more experienced head in that back row. He also knows pretty well how the Panthers forwards play. So you got Liam Martin and Isaiah Yeo in the forward pack. And I think he can sort of maybe share a few secrets on how to handle those guys. I don't think it's a bad selection. I think it adds that experience, and I think that's maybe what Queensland was sort of lacking in the back row in particular.
But did you think Fermor deserved to get dropped though? Because from what I saw, I'd have to go back and really watch the game closely again.
Yeah,
But I mean, I thought you don't. It's tough in Origin. You don't want to bring a player in like that just to drop them after one game because you're going to shatter their
yeah.
confidence. And I just don't like that strategy of is he the scapegoat for a pack that has been dominated? How could you really tell? Do you really think that's a fair chance that he's been given?
I don't think so. It's pretty harsh, but yeah, I think maybe Billy sort of went for the experiment in game one, which didn't work. And now he's sort of played it a little bit safer by selecting a seasoned Origin player who sort of can provide that added experience. And, he's a premiership winner too. So I think he knows how to handle the big games and those big moments. And I think that's where maybe that selection's come from.
No, I agree, and I actually do really like Kate well. I don't mind the selection. I actually thought originally he would have been in that game one team. I think the Broncos, he was one of the players that people don't mention about that 2023 Broncos grand final team. They talk about Tom Flegler and Herbie Farnworth. They don't talk about the fact that Kate well obviously left as well. He was that third player that's often forgotten about when they
Mm.
talk about the
Yeah.
Broncos thing. He brought, like you said, he had the premiership experience with the Panthers. He had a few seasons with Cronulla before that, and I think it was that leadership that young sort of, I would say, cocky and arrogant Broncos team has sorely missed, and he's forgotten about. So I don't mind the pick of him at all. I just think Fermore's been very hard done by when he didn't really get a proper chance. If anything, I would have started him with Kate Well. And anyway, I'm not Billy Slater, and Billy we trust. We will see. And in this team anyway, that's on NRL.com, it's got Trent Lario
Yeah.
at lock,
Yes.
starting with Pat Carrigan on the bench. Now, I'd be very shocked if that's the way they go. What are you thinking?
I do like Trent Liero. I think could potentially be that. I'd like him to be that firebrand along with Tino. And I think
Is he
that
though?
could be.
Is he that type of guy?
I think he can be. I think he can be. He's a tough player. He plays the right way, but I think he adds that little bit of niggle that Queensland need, a bit of aggressiveness to get going, especially in the start when arguably it's the most heated moments in that first sort of 10, 15 minutes. The game's sort of on the line, wrestling for momentum. I think, Trent Liero can sort of add a bit of mongrel in that pack and, really take on Isaiah Yeo as well.
I'm not sold. I'm just not sold at the moment. And you got Paddy Carrigan, who's a top two, top three lock in the game. So if that is, I'm not. I don't know if this is the 17. I think
It,
Billy might be playing a little bit of mind games. I'm not 100% sure. It could be.
Potentially. They normally do. They normally do, the coaches. I don't think the sides settle until they run out on Wednesday night.
I just feel like Nene plays 80, Carrigan can go up there. The rest I agree with. So the rest of the bench we mentioned Mann, Nene, Carrigan, and Lindsay Collins, who I do like off the bench.
Yeah.
He's getting on. To the extended though, it's a bit interesting, and we will get to New South Wales shortly. Obviously, the controversial one at 18th man at the moment is Ezra Mann. Jack
Mm.
Howarth, who you know a lot about, and then Corey Horsburgh, who a lot of people think should be in this team. So I'm not going to rule out him coming into this. I wouldn't mind to see Horsburgh on the bench at all because you mentioned Firebrand. I think
Oh,
he's the guy.
he-
I think Big
he's made
Red
for
is the
Origin.
guy. Yes,
I
and
think, yeah, I'd love to see him get a spot on the bench. I think, you bring him in sort of late in the first half, early in the second half, just rips in, and you want to see that sort of mongrel, and he sort of, you know, approaches the line in the sand. But that's what you want to see, especially in the Origin arena.
100%. Now, we will. I don't want to go into this too much, but the Ezra Mam situation, obviously, it's
Mm.
created headlines. I've spoken about it in the podcast before. We all know the story. You and I might have differing views on it, but I'm just going to give you my view on it. He's played well for the Broncos. He's had two good games, and the man and the player can only accept the punishment that's been put in front of him. It went through the Queensland court system. It was a light punishment, I would say. It was $850 fine, 6-month driving suspension for driving unlicensed by having cocaine in his system. Obviously, hit another car, an Uber, injured a little girl and her mother. It's a terrible story. It's not what you want to see. The NRL obviously fined him, suspended him for 9 games and fined in total with the club and NRL $120,000. He's come back. He spent 1 game in Queensland Cup. He's carved it up for the Broncos in those 2 games. He's going to get booed by opposition fans for the absolute foreseeable future. He's served the punishment that's been put in front of him. I don't see any problem with it.
I do. I didn't think Billy needed to make that selection. It created unwanted headlines in such a pressure moment where they need to win, and that sort of was the main talking point when the Maroons side was named. Why did he pick? Why did he pick him? I don't think he intends on playing him in game two. I would have personally waited, let things cool off, let those sort of the controversy sort of play out, and settle, let the dust settle for a bit. So yeah, I just think it was an unwanted news and unwanted headlines in a team that's fighting to keep the series alive.
From that point of view, like I can totally get it because Billy Slater, one thing we haven't touched on now is the actual coach himself, but I feel like Billy Slater is under pressure. I feel like it's showing a little bit. He's always been a little bit prickly with the media during his press conferences at Origin time. I saw some of his responses when he did his initial one on Monday. And I just feel like it is getting to him. He's obviously staring down some unwanted history, obviously losing that decider last year for the first time in 2 decades. And then now losing back-to-back games at Suncorp. I can't remember the record off the top of my head. It was a very long time. Now facing the prospect of losing 4 straight Origin games. The pressure is on. There's no doubt about it. Billy Slater is
Yeah.
following this trajectory of Freddie Fittler. I don't know if you and I talked about it, but I've spoken with someone about they came in, looked like there's some dynasty, won their first 2 series, then sort of stumbled with the third one, and then things just started going off the rails. And I can sort of see a little bit of that happening now.
I'm biased, but I'm a Billy believer, and I think there's no more resilient person in the game. He has faced pressure his whole career and, had those nasty shoulder injuries that ruled him out for a large chunk of his career. Has come back, fought back. He knows how to fight, and he's always been a fighter. He never gives up. And I think that's the attitude that hopefully he's instilled in this squad. I think game one, they just got outplayed, but I think game two, neutral territory, I think it's going to be, I think they can fight back.
They've never won in Perth. 2 big losses.
I think they'll have the crowd behind them, though.
Yeah, I think everywhere. I think everywhere. It's always Queensland outside of New South
Yeah,
Wales, right? The famous song "That's in Queensland."
yeah,
I think that's very true. And
in
anywhere
Perth.
outside of, oh yeah, we'll see. And I will, of course, I'll be covering it for Fox Sports News, so I can't wait.
Yeah,
First time over in Perth.
great coverage.
I can't wait. And no, we should get into New South Wales now. I had the pleasure of being out there for their initial media day out at Lura and the Blue Mountains. That's where they've obviously set up camp the last couple of years now. Laurie Daly, following on from Michael Maguire. Freezing cold, mate. I had to do a live cross at about 10 a.m. This morning, and it was disgusting. It said it was 8 degrees, felt like 5. I spoke to some people there. They said it was -4 overnight. That's how cold it felt like. There was sleet. My mum called me and said, "Don't be careful of the snow." I said, "I don't think it's snowing, mum." But it's very cold there, mate. I was frozen like an icicle. They had their team day. Got to see the team photo. I got to go one-on-one with a lot of the players inside Origin camp. Very cool, calm, collected. The one thing I'll say, it's sort of annoying, but that's just the modern age day of football. No one wants to throw a sledge. No one wants to give
Hmm.
the other team an inch, something to hold on to, something to run with, something to motivate them. They just don't want to do it. I tried. I asked Laurie Daly, is the Queensland spirit pick and stick dead? And he just didn't want to bar it. He said something along the lines of, I respect Billy Slater. They're going to have him fired up for Perth. It's all PR by the book. And there's just nothing as media, we know we want to create headlines. We love it. That's what we thrive on. But it would be nice for State of Origin to find a little bit of fire, right? Like it's just been missing this series.
Laurie's too nice. Yeah, I feel like someone like Liam Martin or,
I,
yeah, Spencer Lee, you throw a barb, throw some hate to
Well,
each
did
other.
you?
I think.
The
I
funny part
think.
is Spencer won't talk to the media, right? But all that vision from that game one, you see him warming up on the sidelines, giving it to the
Yeah,
crowd and all that type of
just
shit. Like
yeah.
it was pretty nuts, but he won't speak to us. I just wish he would say a few words. And Latrell Mitchell obviously still on his media ban. Nothing's changed. But sorry, continue.
Angus Crichton could get stuck in. I just want someone to get stuck in. It's
Angus,
just
man, I speak to Angus. Angus is lovely. I spoke to Liam Martin as well. And again, they're not those. They're not going to say it. They're just on the field. I'm sure it gets said, but they don't want to
oh,
say it.
for sure. Yeah, maybe they just don't want to distract from the team environment. Remain focused. They're very focused. These footy players these days.
Which is it's professionalism and it's a different
Yeah,
era. Even than what we grew up watching football. I started watching football in the late '90s. It's
yeah.
changed. It's changed.
Nostalgia.
Um,
Bit of nostalgia though. It doesn't get
oh,
lost on you.
Paul Gallen, Nate Miles, two heads. Bring it on. Mate, well, let's get into New South Wales. So the overview of the camp was very calm, cool, collected. I spoke to Nathan Cleary, Mitchell Moses, got to speak to lots of them. Like I said, it's freezing cold there, but they're all very confident. They feel very connected. I can see the boys. This group has really come together. The core of this group has been together for a little while now. Obviously, Mitch Barnett doing his ACL started in the front row with Payne Haas in game one. He is going to be a big loss for them. But for them, pretty straight swap. Stefano Utoikamanu, who you can obviously speak on now as well, who's moved to Melbourne from the Tigers, he's done really well. He was 19th man, I believe, in the first game. He comes straight into the bench, and that's the only change. They're
Mm.
sitting pretty. The only storyline out of that I would say was I feel like Terrell May keeps getting hard done by. Laurie actually
Mm.
opened up on that relationship. Terrell May's obviously had his off-field things. He likes to stream on Twitch. He makes some controversial comments. Not even controversial. He's just outspoken. Doesn't fit that mold of what we just talked about. And I love players like that. He actually sat down with Laurie Day. They went and had coffee. And Laurie spoke about how passionate he is to one day play for New South Wales. But for whatever reason, he said they just can't find a spot for him right now, which I think you'd find a spot in the extended. But that's just the case. What have you just made of all those initial selections and how they handled that?
I think you could say the same case for Matt Burton. He's been 18th man a number of times now.
God, I think he's gone
Even
for a record. It's got to be four or
yeah,
five now, I think. Yeah.
you just can't make the final cut. The Burton Bombs, wouldn't they be a sight on the
Well,
Origin arena?
we
But
saw him a few Origins ago. They were incredible, right? Like a couple of series
oh,
ago.
oh, like yeah, he'll get a shot one day, I'm sure. But Max King starting it proper, I like that. He had a really solid game one debut, and one of those players, kind of like a Kurt Mann, that's just really sort of plied his trade and earned his spot in this team, and finally gets the recognition. But yeah, Stefano Utoikamanu, he's
Very
come to the
nice.
Storm under Craig. Thank you, nailed it. He's come to the Storm. And I think that's a good inclusion. He is basically another version of Payne Haas, that really, tall, big, strong, can really break the line in the middle. So I think Queensland will have their work cut out for them when they face off against him as well.
Yeah, the feeling I'm getting from this team is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, they've
That's
dominated
exactly.
this. Yeah, they've dominated this forward pack for three Origins in a row now. And that's just I tried to talk to some of the forwards about it, but again, they didn't want to sledge Queensland a little bit. Payne Haas very humble. I will get into Payne Haas in a minute too, because he had some very interesting things to say for Broncos fans.
Mhm.
But I will just roll through this team. It's not going to be as exciting as Queensland because it really does pick itself. Dylan Edwards at fullback. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
very settled.
Dylan Edwards at fullback. I mean, it's not even Dylan, quite spoken guy, nothing even to say about it. That Teddy conversation's gone. He's the incumbent, no issues. Brian Toto and Stephen Crichton on one edge.
Yeah.
Again, just informed players who are doing the job for their clubs. Latrell Mitchell obviously was very solid in that first game, and Zach Lomax, the two-try superstar. I got to catch up
Oh,
with him as well. Can give you a little bit of insight into Lura as well. The UFC featherweight champion Alexander the Great Volkanovski is in Lura as well, staying at the same hotel at the moment. The Blues did get to catch up with him. I'm a massive Volk fan, legendary guy. Unfortunately, a Blues fan, but that's okay. He got to catch up with some of the players. Zach Lomax has been on some of the UFC shows before. He's trained some MMA and boxing. He loves
uh,
his combat sports. So awesome to have Volk. They posted some photos on their Instagram. So the great one is there in camp. They're getting it all at the moment, mate.
Good score, yeah. Everything's going smooth sailing for the Blues.
Blues
They've,
up.
they've kind of done a Queensland, they're stuck loyal. It's just it's a well settled side, and stars across the park. Very
Hey,
dangerous.
it's all happening. In the halves, obviously, they had their
Yeah,
first game together, a successful one in Mitch Moses and Nathan Cleary. I got to do a one-on-one with Mitch earlier today. Very cool, calm, collected Mitch. He said he's loved working with Cleary. He says they don't really speak to each other in between games. He said they obviously go out to clubland, but he thinks they both said about each other that that combination they think is only going to get better, which is obviously a scary prospect for Queensland. Nathan Cleary obviously had an absolute shocker with the boot, with conversions, which was probably the only real surprising blemish for New South Wales in game
mm.
one. But I don't think that's ever going to happen again, right? I don't know what went wrong with them on goal kicking that night.
Could put Zach Lomax as a kicker
He went towards
potentially.
the end. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then he didn't he
he's
miss one
pretty
as
good.
well?
How much do you reckon they've worked on their kicking? I think that's probably their only issue. Just practicing, striking them.
I reckon they're going to spend a good chunk of time because they know that this game, obviously, and how these Origin games work. It's like, I know there's lots of New South Wales fans going around saying whitewash, but that's what happens in Origin. They're all in a vacuum. Each game is so different to the next. One team can get blown out of the water one game, and one team can blow the other team out the water and make it a
That's it.
completely. They're just different games. Every single game is different. That's why I love Origin, right? Now back into the forwards, we touched on Max King obviously gets elevated into the spot that Mitch Barnett had. Lovely guy, Max, to talk to, very religious, likes to thank God for how far he's gone. Went through some terrible injury history to do where he was. I can't say a bad word about Maxi King. Payne Haas is the other one now, the big exclusive, which has already come out now. But Payne
Mm.
Haas was speaking to us. He said he wants to be a Bronco for life. So
Oh,
that was
that's brilliant.
that's
You'd
what
be
he said
happy about that?
today. Very happy as a Broncos fan
Good.
myself. One of the journos did ask, while you're in Perth, will you be speaking to the Bears? Because that's obviously, I can tell you, I was out at North Sydney Oval on Sunday, catching up with some Bears legends, and the number one player that they want to build that franchise around, Payne Haas. That is the name that kept getting thrown
Yeah.
up, and the future of Payne Haas is obviously ongoing. Off contract very shortly for the Broncos. Every club's going to have a crack. He's going to become the highest paid forward in the game, no doubt. And honestly, if you could pick one forward, well, a lot of people say if you pick one player in the NRL to build a franchise around, you'd probably Payne Haas is up there, right? Top two, top three.
He just, the success builds around him. You can build a team around him. He'll lift in every game he plays, 120%. He's a freak. He's just the runs that he does, his footwork as well is just next level.
Man of
Damaging for
Man of the match in game one. I remember a few years ago there was a bit of discussion that he hadn't performed at Origin level, but those are well and truly put to bed now. Any suggestions that that wasn't the case? It's just dead and buried. So that is Payne Haas, and very happy. Yeah, so not talking to the Bears. That's the scoop. Reece Robson, another guy you can't really say much about. He's just sort of fit into the system,
so,
done a job, and no real concerns about his place in the team. And then even just looking at their back row here, Liam Martin and Angus Crichton. Angus Crichton, of course, player of the series last year. Liam Martin, you can always count on. It does probably bring that grunt and fire into that pack. And Isaiah Yo, the new captain, really, I can tell you about Yoey, very close to the chest. He does not get emotional at all. I said, what would it feel like to be in your second game, to lift the shield? He said, I haven't even thought about it. So, he wasn't giving me anything.
very
So
measured customer, isn't he? Very just, focuses, just a nice guy, doesn't say a bad word,
well, I
doesn't
suppose.
hate Queensland enough.
Oh, he doesn't. I spoke to him and I said, what was the big difference, mate? Your first Origin game, you're being captain. He said, I led them out. So, so that's that's the big difference for Isaiah Yo. You can't not like the guy. He's just
Yeah.
gets the job done. And then obviously to that bench, Connor Watson in that 14 role, which he's really made his own at rep level. And honestly, one of the real nice guys in the NRL. I can confirm that. Spencer Leniu, obviously, he is going to be the guy that everyone loves to hate. The interesting aspect, which I didn't initially pick up watching the game live, but obviously it's come out since, was how they didn't kick off to Spencer. And that was a big storyline that came out since. And, psychologically, that is a bit of a blow, right? Are they going to do that again? Are Queensland going to really obviously not kick to his side when he comes on off the kickoff?
Yeah, I guess he sort of demands that first run every time there's a kickoff. Spencer Leniu wants it more than anyone else, and when they starve him of that opportunity to run off the back fence, I think he feels that, almost feels the sting. He's offended by it.
Mate, he was getting into the crowd in that vision that was floating around. He was really giving it to him. And honestly, I love it. As much as, you put your representative hat on, you're like, God, don't like this guy in the
Yeah,
Origin on the game night. Like, I love that fire. I really do love
yeah,
that fire.
he is the definition of firebrand. I think Spencer Leniu.
But on the flip side too, man, one strategy obviously would be for Queensland to get under his skin. Because if you can get
Yeah.
under his skin, if he gets sent, if they give away a penalty, that's one area that Queensland, I think, really should be looking to in game two is bringing the niggle.
Spot on.
Reed Barney. I mean, there was chat originally when Harry Grant wasn't in, but a player like that who can get under their skin. Corey
Yeah.
Horsburgh is the name that obviously comes to mind. We just spoke about it, but there is a bunch of sort of nice Queenslanders. Like if you look through the team,
Mm.
Munster really needs to concentrate. What player here, did, and geez, he'd be the last person you'd expect. And Mo's like a softly spoken guy. Tino's also one of the nicest guys you'll come across. Kurt Capewell, there's not many players in this team. Lindsay Collins, he might look like an ogre, but I don't know if he acts like one. Um, and Paddy Carrigan, man. So if I'd be looking at this team, I'd be bringing Horsburgh in just for that alone to try and bring
Yeah.
that niggle to get under the skin of a guy like Lenu. They could throw the whole team off.
I'd like to see the Tino v Payne Haas rivalry reignite. When was that? Was that the year before last?
Yep, a couple
They had
series
that
ago.
really. Yeah. Oh, I'd love to see. When round two for that.
I'll bring it on, mate. I love it. And they're like they have so much respect for each other. But they can turn it on. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
And then obviously rounding out that bench, who's going to come back for his second game, Stefano, like we already talked about. His first game was, I believe, game two, 2023. He sort of got brought in weirdly and then sort of dropped. I don't think it
Mm.
was injury at the time when he was playing for the Tigers. That was sort of a weird series. It was a dead rubber in game three, and they just sort of, I don't know, went for it. And that's it. And obviously, Matt Burton, as we mentioned, 18th man. Keon Koloamatangi, really been on fire the last few weeks for the Roosters as 19th man. And Lindsay Smith, the Panthers forward as well, gets his chance. So there you have it, man. Those are the two teams. I mean, on paper, it's going to be tough for Queensland because I've obviously made some little selection changes. The obviously biggest one is bringing in Tom Dearden at seven, where he's not necessarily a seven. So that is the other problem. Are you confident as a Queenslander, mate? Are you confident going to this game
Well,
in Perth?
Queensland has to roll the dice. Something has to give. Hopefully, this is a good attacking team. It looks like it has points in them. I do like the tall timber on the wings. I think they can really sort of expose the shorter Blues wingers. And I think that could be an area where they'll sort of nullify and try and target. It'll be close. It'll be very close. I think the desperation, the fights that the Maroons have, the Queensland spirit, it's a real thing, and I think they're going to need all of that and more to beat this Blues side next Wednesday in Perth.
They're going to need it, mate. They've never won in Perth out of obviously only two
Mm.
attempts to go on. They're currently paying $3.10, for a deciding game. As a Queenslander, I would be jumping on that. But that just goes
Third
to
time's a
show.
charm.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I just want to go through some stats in that first game too. So Queensland completed at 78%, 32 of their 41 sets. New South Wales at 83%, 40 of 48. Now, this is the one where they kept getting done in, but all run meters, 1425 for Queensland, 1753 for New South Wales. So over 300 meters, and that's been a constant over these last three games. Is that whether it's the pack or the outside backs making the meters, they're just getting dominated. Post contact meters, 480 to 600, so an extra 120, and four line breaks to one. Tackle breaks 49 to 19. So New South Wales are making more meters, they're making more breaks. They're really just dominating them in attack in that defensive area as well. Missed tackles is the big one now that I'm just looking at. 49 for Queensland, 19 to New South Wales. You can't win an Origin series like that.
No, absolutely not. I think it's going to come down to the spine, the Queensland spine, and they're going to have to create opportunities for the rest of the team and get that forward pack rolling as well. And it's up to Harry Grant. I think he needs to lift, and I think he will. And hopefully they can sort of go toe to toe with New South Wales and sort of handle their pressure.
It's going to be interesting, mate. I don't know what to make of it. I'm really hoping they can make it a contest because I know what a lot of people said after that game 1-2 was it just didn't have quite that Origin feel. And I think you and I might have said it to each other on the night, sitting in our little corporate area with our beers and our food, our garlic bread and chicken stir fry. But it didn't quite have that. I don't know. It didn't have even New South Wales people I've spoken to have said a similar sentiment that it just didn't have quite that hard grinding Origin feel that other games have had. Even going back to you and I also sat next to each other at Suncorp Game 3 last year, and that was the quintessential State of
Oh,
Origin game, right?
completely different. Yeah, it felt like a bit of a flat time, and then waking up in Brisbane even the next morning was just I don't know. There was a bit of sadness and gloominess, and the weather as well. Just a grey day. So
I, I was
I
doing
think
live.
sunny days in Perth
Well, I
for the
was doing live
Queensland.
crosses outside the Sofitel, which is the New South Wales Blues team hotel in Brisbane, and there was, I can tell you, a very dark, ominous sort of feeling that
Uh,
morning, heading into lunchtime. So,
the
look,
sadness sticks around.
that's right, mate. So it's going to be very interesting how it goes. Queensland have obviously made these changes. Tom Dearden is going to be key because the pressure is on. He's done it before, but can they turn it around? They're going to have to get it done with these forwards firstly. They're going to have to really try and win this battle. And then, like I mentioned before, that long kicking game, they're going to have to try and put New South Wales in the back foot because if they can't get this right, get that ball in deep and make them work hard out of their own end, it's going to be a very, very long night for Queensland. If they miss tackles like they did and let them get tackle breaks and make 300 more meters on average throughout these last few games, it's going to be a very long night.
Yep, they're going to have to, raise to the same intensity as the Blues, who always come out firing. And I think that's the key. If they can sort of match the intensity, then who knows, the opportunities will come.
We'll just have to wait and see, man. Now, I'll, of course, be going to Perth. I can't wait. It'll be my first time to Perth.
Yeah.
I'll be leaving on Saturday for Fox Sports News, following the Blues in the lead up, obviously, into game day, Optus Stadium. I can't wait. I love going to new stadiums. It'll be first time in Perth, first time at Optus, sellout crowd. And then I'll be at the winning team hotel in the morning. So it'll be very interesting. What about you, mate? What are the plans for the game? You will still be covering it?
I'll be covering it here in sunny Melbourne. Can't wait. Watching it in front of the couch on the big screen. Hopefully a Queensland win. My tip, don't know. I think Queensland 24-20 and Cam Munster, man of the match, as captain.
I would like to see that. And I don't disagree with the points too. I think that there could be points in this game. Just based on it goes, like I don't know if Queensland can really go with, but Queensland obviously do have points in them. It's just that they're going to have to try and win this forward battle. But it's going to be interesting, mate. Wednesday night. I want to reserve my tip, mate, because I'm still going to do a few more of these these podcasts in the lead up inside Origin camp. I did a few in the lead up to game one. I want to continue this. I'll still be following the Blues. I'll get out to the Blue Mountains later in this week. So I do think Queensland will be much improved, but I'm going to just reserve my opinion just for now.
Right, and get that Maroons passion back on Wednesday after a week of covering New South Wales.
Queensland spirit, bring it on. I mean, they dump their captain, they bring in Cameron Munster. It's all set up for a Queensland ambush. Bringing it back, Queensland spirit. New South Wales thinks it's a clean sweep. New dynasty on the way. We'll find out Wednesday night.
Bring it on, game on.
Let's go. Thank you very much again for joining me, Harrison, mate. Legendary, award-winning now in illustrious company. But thanks again for taking the time to join us on Season Ticket Holders and enjoy the game on Wednesday night.
Thanks, Dano. Good to be on.
Pleasure, man. Anytime. And thanks for all your support, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.